The Vraxian Empire had controlled the Orion sector for 12,000 years. Their cities floated above gas giants, shining like jewels in the darkness of space. Their fleet had millions of ships. Their scientists had conquered death itself, allowing Vraxians to live for thousands of years. They believed nothing in the galaxy could challenge them. When the Vraxian High Council gathered on their home world of Vraxis Prime, they had one item on their agenda. A new species had discovered faster-than-light travel. They called themselves humans. The council needed to decide what to do about them. Commander Zethkal stood before the council. He was young for a Vraxian, only 300 years old. He had never known war or hardship. His entire life had been one of comfort and privilege. He presented his report with confidence. Humanity had 7 colony worlds. They had achieved this in only 40 years. Their expansion rate concerned some analysts. But Zethkal dismissed these worries. Human technology was primitive. They used fusion engines that the Vraxians had abandoned 5,000 years ago. They fought with kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles. They still died from diseases. The council members nodded as they listened. This matched their expectations. Young species were always primitive. They would learn their place in the galactic order, just as every other species had learned. Then Elder Quintar spoke. His voice shook with age. He had lived for 3,000 years, longer than any other Vraxian alive. He had spent centuries studying the old archives, the forbidden texts that most Vraxians ignored. We must leave the humans alone, Quintar said. I have read the ancient records. There are species in this universe that we should never provoke. The humans are one of them. Several council members laughed. Zethkal smiled with contempt. Elder, with respect, these humans are children. They have 7 worlds. We have 10,000. They have a few hundred ships. We have millions. What could they possibly do to us? Quintar's ancient eyes studied the younger Vraxian. You have never known struggle. You have never faced an enemy that refuses to surrender. The old texts warn us about species like humanity. They breed quickly. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered. Most importantly, they do not forgive. If we attack them, they will not stop until we are destroyed. The council chamber fell silent for a moment. Then Zethkal broke the silence with laughter. The elder speaks of myths and legends. The reality is simple. The humans have established colonies in space that belongs to the Vraxian Empire. They did not ask permission. They did not pay tribute. This insult cannot stand. Away, the vote began. One by one, council members voted to punish humanity. They would seize 3 human colonies as payment for their unauthorized expansion. The humans would surrender these worlds, accept Vraxian authority, and pay tribute like every other species in the sector. Only Quintar voted against the measure. When the voting ended, he requested permission to speak once more. I have lived for 3,000 years, the old Vraxian said quietly. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have read texts that you dismiss as fantasy. I tell you now, there are species that you do not conquer. You either leave them alone, or they will destroy you. Humanity is such a species. Please, reconsider this decision. The council ignored his plea. The meeting ended. Orders went out to the fleet. 300 Vraxian warships prepared to jump into human space. Each ship was a masterpiece, built over centuries by the finest engineers in the Empire. They were beautiful vessels, designed as much for art as for war. On Earth, in the city of Geneva, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in the Unified Humanity Command Center. He was reading a message that had just arrived from Vraxian space. His hands tightened on the paper as he read the words. The Vraxians demanded 3 human colonies: New Haven, Sanctuary, and Liberty Point. These worlds held over 2 million human civilians. The Vraxians gave humanity 48 hours to surrender these colonies peacefully. If humanity refused, the Vraxian fleet would take them by force. Morrison read the message 3 times. His daughter Amy lived on New Haven. She was a terraforming engineer, helping to build a future for humanity among the stars. Now aliens he had never met were demanding that he hand over his daughter's home. He reached for the emergency communication system. Within minutes, every human military installation received the same alert. Every ship captain, every marine commander, every defense station operator got the message. War was coming. Morrison gave clear orders. Evacuate the 3 targeted colonies. Strip them of everything valuable. Prepare the defense fleets, and rig everything that could not be moved with explosives. The Vraxian fleet arrived at New Haven exactly on schedule. Their ships came out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Commander Zethkal expected to find frightened colonists ready to surrender. He had prepared a speech about mercy and the benefits of accepting Vraxian rule. Instead, he found an empty planet. Every human was gone. The cities were deserted. Not a single person remained. Zethkal frowned. This was unexpected, but not a problem. The Vraxians would simply occupy the colony and move humans back under Vraxian supervision. He ordered his ships to begin landing operations. The first transport touched down in New Haven's capital city. Vraxian soldiers stepped out onto the empty streets. They moved cautiously through the abandoned buildings, searching for any signs of life. Then the mining charges detonated. The humans had placed explosives in every major building, every power plant, every water purification facility. The capital city vanished in a massive explosion that lit up the sky. The blast was so powerful it could be seen from orbit. Zethkal stared at his screens in shock. The entire city was gone. Destroyed. The humans had blown up their own colony rather than let the Vraxians take it. Why would they do this? His second officer asked. The colony took them years to build. They destroyed their own work. Zethkal had no answer. In 12,000 years of Vraxian history, no species had ever destroyed their own cities, rather than surrender them. It made no sense. It was wasteful. It was insane. He ordered the fleet to proceed to the second target, Sanctuary Colony. Surely this was just one mad colonial governor, making an irrational decision. The other colonies would be M. The Vraxian Empire had never experienced total war. Their conflicts were careful, calculated affairs. Fleets would maneuver for position. Commanders would negotiate before anyone died. War was a game of strategy, played by rules that everyone understood. Casualties were avoided when possible. Surrender was always an option. Humanity did not play by those rules. Captain Ben Harris commanded a human destroyer, called the Relentless. His ship was brand new. So new that the paint still smelled fresh. He had spent the last week hiding in an asteroid field near Sanctuary Colony, waiting with 200 other human ships. Below them, on the colony world, 800,000 people lived their lives. There were schools full of children, hospitals caring for the sick, retirement homes where old people spent their final years in peace. Sanctuary was a beautiful world, and humanity had spent decades building it. Now the Vraxians were coming to take it. The enemy fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Ben watched them on his screens. The Vraxian ships were beautiful. Each one was unique, built by master craftsmen who had spent centuries perfecting their art. They gleamed in the light of Sanctuary's sun, their shields shimmering with strange energies. Ben had orders from Admiral Morrison himself. Those orders were simple. Make the Vraxians regret starting this war. All ships, Ben said into his communicator. Drop stealth fields. Fire everything. 200 human ships appeared out of nowhere. They had been hiding, waiting, preparing. Now they unleashed every weapon they had. Nuclear torpedoes streaked through space. Railguns fired tungsten rods at incredible speeds. Laser batteries carved through the darkness. Kinetic kill vehicles, simple chunks of metal moving at tremendous velocity, slammed into Vraxian shields. The Vraxian fleet tried to respond. Their commanders shouted orders. Their gunners aimed their exotic energy weapons. But they were too slow, too shocked by the ferocity of the human attack. Human military doctrine was simple. If you wanted to kill an enemy, you used enough firepower to kill them 3 times over. Then you doubled it just to be sure. 17 Vraxian ships died in the first 30 seconds. Their shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did nothing against 100-ton metal rods moving at a fraction of light speed. Their armor, built to withstand their own advanced weapons, cracked and shattered under nuclear explosions. The Vraxian commander, a veteran named Torvan, stared at his screens in horror. He had fought in 3 wars during his 1,000-year life. He had never seen anything like this. The humans fought like animals, with no regard for elegance or efficiency. They just wanted to kill. "Retreat," Torvan ordered. "All ships, jump to hyperspace immediately." For the first time in Vraxian history, a Vraxian fleet ran from battle. They left behind their damaged ships. They abandoned their wounded. They fled in panic, leaving the humans in control of the battlefield. Ben Harris watched them go. His ship had taken some damage, but nothing serious. Around him, other human ships were counting their losses. They had lost 11 vessels, 11 ships, and about 3,000 crew members. It hurt, but they had destroyed or damaged over 50 Vraxian ships. "Captain," his communications officer said, "Admiral Morrison wants a report." Ben sent the report back to Earth. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes. Humanity had won its first fleet engagement against the Vraxian Empire. On Earth, Admiral Morrison read the battle reports with satisfaction. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Vraxians had millions of ships. They would come back with more force next time. He called Dr. Kate Sullivan into his office. She was humanity's top expert on alien biology. She had spent years studying every species humans had encountered. Now, Morrison needed her expertise. "Tell me about the Vraxians," Morrison said. "What are their weaknesses?" Kate pulled up files on her computer. "They live for thousands of years. They rarely have children. Each Vraxian is precious. They spend centuries educating each individual. Their entire society is built around preserving life and avoiding loss." Morrison understood immediately. "So every casualty hurts them more than it hurts us." "Exactly," Kate said. "We can replace our losses. Train new soldiers. Build new ships. They cannot. Every Vraxian who dies is a loss of thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and experience." Morrison nodded. "Then we make them bleed. We make them understand what it costs to fight humanity." The war spread across human space. Morrison ordered all frontier colonies evacuated. Every civilian was pulled back to the core worlds around Earth. The frontier became a killing ground, where human forces could fight without worrying about protecting civilians. Lieutenant Chris Palmer led a Marine unit specializing in boarding actions and station raids. He was 25 years old, a veteran of the Colonial Defense Forces. His orders were to attack Vraxian outposts and make the enemy understand fear. Palmer's unit hit the Vraxian mining station Krell 9. They breached the hull and fought their way inside. But instead of killing everyone, Palmer gave the Vraxian workers a choice. "You have 10 minutes to evacuate," Palmer announced over the station's speakers. "After that, we destroy this facility. Leave now, and you live. Stay, and you die." The Vraxian workers fled in confusion. They had expected the humans to simply kill them all. Instead, they were being given a chance to survive. It made no sense according to everything they knew about warfare. Once the station was empty, Palmer's Marines spent 6 hours destroying everything. They smashed computers. They wrecked mining equipment. They cut power lines and sabotaged life support systems. When they left, the station was a worthless hulk floating in space. The pattern repeated across Vraxian space. Human forces would attack, offer surrender terms, then destroy everything of value if the Vraxians fled. They never killed unnecessarily, but they showed no mercy to equipment or infrastructure. The Vraxian leadership could not understand the human strategy. Why destroy instead of capture? Why give warnings instead of just killing everyone? Why fight with such violence but then show unexpected mercy? Commander Zethkal sat in his quarters aboard his flagship, trying to make sense of it all. He was beginning to suspect that Elder Quintar had been right. These humans were not rational actors. They could not be understood through normal strategic thinking. He called up the old texts that Quintar had mentioned. The forbidden archives that spoke of dangerous species. The warnings that the Council had dismissed as myths and legends. The texts spoke of species that evolved as hunters. Species that chased their prey across continents until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Species that had survived ice ages and plagues and countless wars among themselves. Species that knew loss intimately and had learned to endure it. Zethkal read about humanity's history. How they had climbed down from trees and walked upright across grasslands. How they had hunted animals much larger and stronger than themselves. How they had spread across their entire planet, adapting to every environment. How they had nearly destroyed themselves in nuclear wars, then pulled back from the brink and reached for the stars. He understood now. The Vraxians had been comfortable for too long. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle. They had never needed to develop the kind of determination that came from constant hardship. Humanity had never stopped struggling. Every generation faced new challenges. They were born, they fought, they died, and the next generation continued the fight. It was in their blood. It was who they were. Zethkal sent a message to the Council. The war needed to end. 6 months into the war, the Vraxian Empire was bleeding. They had lost more ships in half a year than they had lost in the previous 1,000 years combined. Their economy, built on the assumption of eternal peace and stability, was collapsing under the strain of constant warfare. Worlds that had known only peace for thousands of years were now building weapons and training soldiers. The Vraxian people, who had spent millennia pursuing art and philosophy, now studied tactics and strategy. The Vraxian Council met again, but this time, they gathered in a deep bunker beneath Vraxis Prime's surface. The beautiful crystal towers that had housed their government for ages now stood empty. Human intelligence suggested they would make perfect targets for a missile strike. Elder Quintar attended the meeting by hologram. He was too old and frail to travel now. His 3,000-year-old body was finally failing. He watched the council members with sad, ancient eyes. "I warned you," Quintar said quietly. "Now you understand the price of ignoring old wisdom." Commander Zethkal presented the military situation. He looked different now. The arrogance was gone from his face. 6 months of war had aged him more than the previous 300 years of peace. "We have lost control of 73 worlds," Zethkal reported. "The humans are advancing on 3 fronts. For every ship we destroy, they build 2 more to replace it. We cannot match their production rate." A council member named Kelthar spoke up. "How is this possible? We have superior technology. Our ships are more powerful. Our weapons are more advanced. Technology does not matter when you are outnumbered 10 to 1, Zethkal replied. "The humans breed faster than we do. Every month, thousands more humans reach military age. Every month, they commission dozens of new ships. We cannot replace our losses fast enough." The council debated for hours. Finally, someone suggested the obvious solution: sue for peace, offer reasonable terms, return to the pre-war borders, recognize human sovereignty over their colonies, pay some reparations, and end this costly conflict. The council drafted a peace proposal and sent it to Earth. They were certain the humans would accept. After all, humanity had won. They had proven their point. Surely they would be reasonable now. Admiral Morrison received the peace offer in his Geneva office. He read it once, then handed it to his aide, Lieutenant Alex Chen. "What should I tell them, sir?" Alex asked. Morrison's answer was one word. "No." Alex blinked in surprise. "Sir, the offer is actually quite generous. They're conceding almost everything we fought for." "Almost," Morrison said. "That is not good enough. Send them my response." The Vraxian Council was stunned when they received Morrison's rejection. They had never had a peace offer refused before. They sent ambassadors to neutral space, requesting a meeting with human representatives. They needed to understand what terms humanity would accept. Ambassador Nicole Harper met the Vraxian delegation on Threshold Station, a neutral trading post on the edge of explored space. She was a career diplomat who spoke 7 alien languages. The Vraxians expected negotiations and compromise. They got neither. "You attacked our colonies," Harper said, her voice cold and hard. "You threatened our civilians. You believed that because you were older and more advanced, we would simply surrender. You were wrong." The lead Vraxian ambassador was named Silrain. He was a dignified elder, over 2,000 years old. He tried to explain their position. "We were merely enforcing our territorial claims," Silrain said. "The colonies you established were in disputed space. We had every legal right to," Harper interrupted him. "You had power. You mistook power for right. Now you are learning the difference." Silrain paused, confused by the human's anger. "What terms would humanity accept for peace?" Harper smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Unconditional surrender. Complete dismantlement of your military fleet. Reparations to every human family that lost someone in your attacks. War crimes trials for your council members. And one more thing." "What?" Silrain asked. "Freedom for every species you have ever conquered. Full independence for all of them." The Vraxian delegation sat in shocked silence. These terms would destroy the Empire. Everything their civilization had built over 12,000 years would be gone. "That is impossible," Silrain said quietly. "Our empire would cease to exist." "Then the war continues," Harper replied. "And I promise you, Ambassador, we will burn every world you own. Not because we want to, but because you need to learn that some species cannot be bullied." The peace talks collapsed. The war went on. Human casualties were mounting. The cruiser Valiant was destroyed with all hands, taking 300 crew members to their deaths. A Vraxian strike hit the Marine barracks on Armstrong Station, killing 2,000 soldiers. Every week brought new casualty reports, new funerals, new families mourning their dead. But humanity did not break. Colonel Lisa Grant lost her husband Derek in the Battle of Kepler 442. He was a fighter pilot, shot down while covering a retreat. Lisa took 3 days off to grieve. Then, she returned to her post, commanding Earth's orbital defense fortresses. A reporter asked her how she could continue after losing her husband. Lisa looked at the camera with dry eyes and said, "Because if I stop, Derek died for nothing. We all keep going until this is finished." That interview played on every news channel across human space. It became a rallying cry. Keep going. Keep fighting. Do not stop until it is finished. The Vraxians watched the interview with growing horror. How could a species continue fighting after losing so much? Why did the survivors not demand peace? Why did the families of the dead not call for surrender? Elder Quintar knew the answer. He had spent thousands of years studying different species. He understood what made humanity dangerous. "They are persistence hunters," Quintar explained to the council. On their home world, their ancestors would chase prey for days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They did not need to be faster or stronger. They just needed to refuse to give up. That instinct is still inside them. They will chase us until we collapse. "But we are not prey animals," Zethkal protested. "We are the Vraxian Empire." "We were the Vraxian Empire," Quintar corrected gently. "Now we are learning what happens when comfort makes you weak." The Vraxians had one advantage left. Their ships were still technologically superior. Their weapons could still destroy human vessels in direct combat. If they could force a decisive battle, they might turn the tide of the war. The council ordered their remaining fleet to gather at Vraxis Secundus, their second most important world. They would make a stand there. Either they would crush the human fleet, or they would lose the war completely. Admiral Morrison received intelligence about the Vraxian fleet concentration. He saw the opportunity immediately. If he could destroy the Vraxian fleet at Vraxis Secundus, the war would be over. The Battle of Vraxis Secundus would decide the war. Both sides knew it. The Vraxians had gathered 500 warships, including their newest and most powerful vessels. The planet below held 8 billion Vraxian civilians and the shipyards that produced half their remaining fleet. Fleet Admiral Ryan Mitchell commanded the human task force from his flagship, the carrier Indomitable. His orders from Earth were clear and simple. Take the planet, or destroy its ability to make war. Either outcome was acceptable. Ryan studied the tactical display. 500 Vraxian ships against his 300. The enemy had superior technology and the home field advantage. He could not win a straight fight, so he decided not to fight fair. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace not in one concentrated group, but scattered across the entire star system in dozens of small squadrons. Before the Vraxians could respond, human ships began launching drone fighters. The drones were simple machines, no pilot, no life support, just engines, explosives, and basic targeting systems. Each one was programmed to crash into Vraxian ships at maximum speed. The Vraxian commander, a female named Vexil, stared at her screens in confusion. The humans were using unmanned vessels in combat. The idea was horrifying to Vraxian military culture. Sending a machine to do a warrior's job was considered dishonorable. Cowardly even. Vexil hesitated. Should she target the drones or focus on the manned human ships? The decision cost her precious seconds. The drones did not hesitate. They crashed into 3 Vraxian dreadnoughts. One exploded instantly. The other 2 were crippled, their shields failing and hulls breaching. All ships, attack the manned vessels, Vexil ordered. Ignore the drones. But it was too late. More drones were already launching. And behind them, human ships darted in and out of the Vraxian formation, firing at point-blank range before jumping away to safety. The Vraxians tried to maintain their elegant battle formations. Their tactics manual, written over thousands of years, emphasized coordination and precision. Ships were supposed to support each other, covering weak points and creating overlapping fields of fire. The humans ignored all of that. They fought like street brawlers, not like trained soldiers. They ambushed from unexpected angles. They concentrated fire on single targets. They used tricks and deception that no honorable warrior would consider. It was effective. Vexil watched her fleet fall apart. Ships collided as they tried to dodge human attacks. Captains shouted contradictory orders. The careful coordination that was supposed to be their strength became their weakness as the humans exploited every gap in their formation. For the first time in her 800-year life, Vexil felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. Real, genuine fear that she was going to die. On the human carrier Indomitable, Colonel Matt Jackson prepared his Marines for boarding operations. His orders were unusual. Capture enemy ships if possible, but more importantly, talk to the Vraxian crews. Make them understand what they are fighting, Admiral Mitchell had told him. Make them understand why we will not stop. Jackson's team breached the Vraxian cruiser Harmony. The ship was damaged, its engines dead, and life support failing. The Vraxian crew was trying to scuttle their own vessel rather than let it be captured. Jackson found the captain, a Vraxian female named Telis. She had served for 600 years without ever facing real combat. Now, she sat in her ruined command center, preparing to die. "Stop," Jackson said, his voice amplified through his helmet speakers. Telis looked at the human in his bulky armor. This creature had lived maybe 30 years compared to her 6 centuries. Yet he stood there, in control, while her ship was destroyed around her. "Why do you fight so hard?" Telis asked. "Your lives are so brief. A few decades, and you are gone. Why waste those precious years on war?" Jackson removed his helmet. He wanted her to see his face. "Because those few decades are all we get. We do not have centuries to waste. Every moment matters to us. You tried to take those moments away from our people. You attacked our colonies. You threatened our families. So now we fight." Telis stared at him. "But you must know you will die someday. War or peace, you will be dead in a few decades." "Everyone dies," Jackson said. "But not everyone lives. We choose to live free, not as subjects of your empire. That choice is worth fighting for, worth dying for." He offered his hand to help her stand. "Come on. Your crew can surrender. We will treat you well. This ship is lost, But you do not have to go down with it. Tellus took his hand. She did not understand these humans, but she was beginning to see why the Empire was losing. The battle lasted 16 hours. When it ended, the Vraxian defense fleet was destroyed. 200 ships were gone. The rest were captured or crippled. Vraxis Secundus hung in space. Defenseless, Admiral Mitchell opened a communication channel to the planet. This is Fleet Admiral Ryan Mitchell of the Unified Humanity Fleet. Your orbital defenses are destroyed. Your fleet is gone. You have 24 hours to evacuate all military personnel from the planet. After that, we will occupy Vraxis Secundus. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. The planetary governor, a Vraxian elder named Kethmar, stared at the human on his screen. This was impossible. Vraxis Secundus had never been conquered. It had stood for 8,000 years as one of the pillars of the Empire. And if we refuse? Kethmar asked. Mitchell's face was hard. Then we will bombard your cities from orbit until you surrender. I do not want to kill civilians, Governor. Do not make me. Kethmar believed him. Something in the human's eyes said he was absolutely serious. He would do what was necessary, even if it meant destroying an entire world. We surrender, Kethmar said quietly. I will order the evacuation. True to his word, Mitchell allowed the Vraxian military to leave peacefully. Transports lifted off, carrying soldiers, equipment, and government officials. The human fleet did not interfere. When the evacuation was complete, human marines landed on Vraxis Secundus. They occupied the government buildings, the shipyards, and the communication centers. Not a single shot was fired. The conquest was bloodless. News of the defeat reached Vraxis Prime within hours. The Vraxian Council convened an emergency session. They had lost their second most important world. Their fleet was shattered. Their economy was in ruins. Elder Quintar, now barely clinging to life, addressed the council one last time. His hologram flickered as his body failed. 12,000 years of peace made us weak, Quintar said, his voice barely a whisper. We forgot how to struggle. We forgot that the universe is not kind to those who grow soft. I told you not to provoke humanity. You would not listen. Now you pay the price. Commander Zethkal, who had voted to start this war, looked at the old elder with tears in his eyes. What should we do? Surrender, Quintar said, completely. Give them everything they demand, and pray they show us mercy. The council voted. This time it was unanimous. They would offer Uncon. The war ended on a Tuesday, Earth Standard Time. The Vraxian Council transmitted their unconditional surrender to Admiral Morrison's headquarters in Geneva. The empire that had ruled the Orion sector for 12,000 years agreed to dismantle itself completely. Morrison read the surrender document carefully. Every term humanity had demanded was accepted without modification. The Vraxian fleet would be decommissioned. War crimes trials would begin, reparations would be paid, and most importantly, every species the Vraxians had conquered would receive their freedom. He signed the document and transmitted it back to Vraxis Prime. The war was over. Humanity had won. But Morrison felt no joy. He looked at the casualty reports on his desk. 23,000 human soldiers and sailors had died in the war. 6,000 civilians had been killed in the initial attacks. Another 12,000 had died from various war-related causes. 41,000 humans were dead. 41,000 families would never see their loved ones again. Victory did not bring them back. Morrison ordered flags across human space lowered to half-staff. A week of mourning was declared. Then, the work of building peace would begin. Ambassador Nicole Harper took charge of overseeing the surrender terms. She traveled to Vraxis Prime with a team of lawyers, military advisors, and diplomats. Her first task was to begin the process of liberating the subject species of the Vraxian Empire. It proved more complicated than expected. 47 different alien species had been ruled by the Vraxians, some for thousands of years. Many of these species did not know how to function independently. The Vraxians had controlled every aspect of their lives, from resource allocation to population management. Harper met with representatives from each species. Many were terrified. They did not know what independence meant. They begged to remain under protection. Even if it was human protection instead of Vraxian. You are free, Harper told each delegation. We will help you establish your own governments. We will provide advisors if you request them. But you will rule yourselves. That is not negotiable. It took months, but eventually each species began to adapt. Some formed democracies. Others chose different systems. A few even maintained friendly relations with the Vraxians, choosing forgiveness over revenge. The reparations were massive. The Vraxians paid in technology, resources, and labor. They shared medical advances that could extend human lifespans by centuries. They provided power generation systems far more efficient than anything humanity had developed. They helped rebuild the colonies they had attacked. Captain Ben Harris retired from military service and took a job teaching at the new Unified Humanity Naval Academy. On the first day of each semester, he gave the same lecture to new cadets. We did not win because we were better, Harris told his students. We won because we refused to lose. Remember that. And remember that wars should always be a last resort. Winning costs more than you can imagine. His students listened carefully. Many of them had lost family members in the war. They understood the price of victory. Dr. Kate Sullivan led a joint human-Vraxian research initiative to share medical knowledge. The Vraxians taught humans how to extend their lifespans and cure diseases. Humans taught the Vraxians how to adapt to rapid change and think creatively under pressure. Working together, the two species made advances that neither could have achieved alone. A grudging respect developed between former enemies. Commander Zethkal faced trial for war crimes on Earth. He stood before a human judge and a jury of representatives from the species affected by the war. The prosecution presented evidence of his role in starting the conflict. Zethkal did not deny anything. I believed the Vraxian Empire was invincible, he told the court. I believed we had the right to rule because we were older and more advanced. I was wrong. I accept responsibility for my mistakes. The court sentenced him to 50 years of service helping to rebuild the colonies he had ordered attacked. Zethkal accepted the sentence without complaint. He would spend the rest of his long life trying to make amends. On the 10th anniversary of the war's end, Admiral Morrison visited New Haven Colony. The world had been completely rebuilt, better than before. The cities gleamed in the sunlight, parks and schools filled the landscape. It was hard to believe this world had once been nothing but rubble. His daughter Amy met him at the spaceport. She had continued her work as a terraforming engineer, helping to rebuild New Haven from the ground up. Come see something, Amy said, leading her father through the rebuilt capital city. They arrived at a memorial. It was a simple wall of black stone, inscribed with names. Every human who had died in the war was listed there. Soldiers and civilians, adults and children. Every single one. Do you think it was worth it? Amy asked quietly. Morrison was silent for a long time. He read the names on the wall. He knew some of them personally. Officers who had served under him. Soldiers he had sent into battle. People who had trusted him to lead them. No war is worth the cost, Morrison finally said. But some wars are necessary. The Vraxians needed to learn that humanity cannot be bullied. That we will fight for our right to exist, no matter how much it costs us. And did they learn? Amy asked. Yes, Morrison said. And so did every other species watching. They learned that humanity will endure. We adapt. We overcome. That is what makes us who we are. The memorial stood on New Haven for centuries afterward. It became a pilgrimage site for humans and Vraxians alike. The inscription at the base read simply, "They warned us never to provoke humanity. We did not listen. We paid the price. Let all who come after learn from our mistake." The Vraxians never forgot the lesson. Neither did humanity. Across the galaxy, the story spread. The young species that had defeated an empire 12,000 years old. The survivors who refused to break. The warriors who fought with terrible intensity but showed unexpected mercy and victory. Some species feared humanity. Others respected them. All of them remembered the lesson. Never mistake patience for weakness. Never mistake kindness for cowardice. Over the following decades, humanity and the Vraxians built a new relationship. Not as masters and subjects, but as equals. The Vraxians taught humans about their long history and accumulated wisdom. Humans taught the Vraxians about resilience and adaptation. Captain Ben Harris lived to see his great-grandchildren attend the Naval Academy. The life extension technology from the Vraxians had given him decades he never expected to have. He spent those years teaching new generations about the cost of war and the value of peace. Dr. Kate Sullivan's research led to medical breakthroughs that saved billions of lives across dozens of species. She received the Vraxian Medal of Honor, the first human ever to receive the award. Ambassador Nicole Harper negotiated treaties between humanity and 40 other species. She built the foundations of a new galactic community based on mutual respect rather than domination. Admiral Morrison retired at the age of 95, having lived to see humanity become one of the most respected species in the galaxy. His last public speech was given at the Naval Academy. "We fought because we had to," Morrison told the assembled crowd. "We won because we refused to quit. But the real victory came after the war ended. We chose peace over revenge. We chose cooperation over domination. That is what I hope future generations remember." The Vraxian Empire was gone. But the Vraxian people survived. They adapted to their new reality as equals rather than rulers. Some thrived in the new order. Others struggled. But all of them remembered the lesson humanity had taught them. There are species in the universe that you do not provoke. Species that will endure any hardship rather than surrender. Species that fight with everything they have when threatened. Humanity was one of those species. The galaxy learned to respect the young species from the small blue world. The species that had climbed down from trees, walked out of Africa, and decided to reach for the stars. The species that refused to accept limits or surrender to fear. Humanity endured. And in enduring, they changed the galaxy forever. The memorial on New Haven stood as a permanent reminder. The names carved in stone would never be forgotten. The sacrifice would never be wasted. The lesson would never be lost. The elders had warned. The Vraxians had ignored the warnings, and they had paid the price for their arrogance. But from that price came something new. A galaxy where species met as equals. Where conflicts could be resolved without total war. Where young species and old species alike had learned to respect each other. It was not the future anyone had expected when the war began. But it was a better future than what came before. And humanity, having proven themselves in fire and blood, turned their attention to building rather than destroying, to creating rather than conquering, to showing the galaxy that their strength came not from a desire to dominate, but from an unbreakable will to survive and thrive. The war was over. The peace had begun. And the galaxy would never be the same. Additional surrender to humanity. Zethkal sent the message himself. He included a personal note to Admiral Morrison. "You were right. We were wrong. We beg for mercy for our people. End this war, please." On Earth, Morrison read the surrender offer. He called a meeting with his senior commanders and civilian leadership. They debated for 6 hours about what terms to demand. In the end, they agreed on Ambassador Harper's original conditions. Unconditional surrender. Dismantlement of the fleet. War crimes. Trials. Reparations. And freedom for all conquered species. The Vraxian Council accepted every term. They had no choice. Their empire was finished. Elder Quintar died that night, peacefully in his sleep. His last words were recorded by his attendants. "I tried to warn them. The young never listened to the old. The war was over. Humanity had won. But the price had been terrible for both sides. Now came the hard part. Building peace from the ashes of war." He assembled every available ship, 300 capital ships, 1,000 support vessels, 50,000 Marines on assault carriers. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever put together. Morrison knew he was risking everything on one battle. If he lost, Earth would be defenseless. But if he won, the war would end. He gave a speech to his commanders before they departed. The Vraxians think they can win through superior technology. They think we will break if they hit us hard enough. Show them they are wrong. Show them what it means to fight humanity. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for Vraxis Secundus. The decisive battle was about to begin. On Vraxis Prime, Elder Quintar lay in his bed, feeling his long life finally coming to an end. He had tried to warn the Council. He had begged them not to provoke humanity. They had not listened. Now the Empire would pay the price for their arrogance. Quintar only hoped that some Vraxians would survive to learn from this mistake. He closed his eyes and waited for news of the battle that would decide everything. The Vraxian Empire could not win against an enemy like this. Every battle cost them ships and lives they could not replace. Every victory for humanity made them stronger and more determined. The Council sent back a single-word response. Continue. Zethkal closed his eyes. The Council still did not understand. They thought this was just another war, another minor conflict that would end in negotiated peace. They had no idea what they were fighting. On Earth, Admiral Morrison prepared for the next phase of the war. Human shipyards were working around the clock. New vessels rolled out every day. Young men and women volunteered for military service in numbers that surprised even Morrison. He asked one recruit why she had joined. Her name was Linda Carter. She was 19 years old. "My brother died at Sanctuary," Linda said. "He was a pilot. The Vraxians killed him. So now I am going to fight until this war is over." Morrison saw that same determination in every recruit. Humanity had been attacked. Their colonies had been threatened. Their people had been killed. Now, they wanted justice. The Vraxians had started this war thinking it would be easy. They were learning otherwise. And the lessons were just beginning. Or reasonable. But even as he gave the order, doubt crept into his mind. Elder Quintar's words echoed in his memory. There are species that you do not conquer. They either survive you, or you perish. Zethkal pushed the thought away. The Vraxian Empire had stood for 12,000 years. They would not fall to a species that had barely learned to travel between stars. This was just a minor setback. He had no idea how wrong he was. The humans were not surrendering. They were preparing. And they were very, very angry. On Earth, Admiral Morrison watched the reports from New Haven. The colony was gone, but every civilian had escaped. His daughter Amy was safe on a transport, heading back to Earth. The Vraxians had taken nothing but rubble and ash. Morrison allowed himself a grim smile. The message was sent. If the Vraxians wanted human colonies, they would get nothing but ruins. And now humanity would show these ancient aliens what it meant to fight a species that had clawed its way up from the bottom of the food chain. The war had begun. The Vraxians thought they were teaching humanity a lesson. They were about to learn one instead.